In my house, I pay. You follow my rules. That works for me too. When I was a kid, my parents used the "my home, my rules" period. I was told that when I have my own home and pay my own bills, I can make the rules. It drove me crazy, but can't argue with that logic. Years later, as an adult who was paying my own bills, my parents came to visit and wanted to stay with me. My mom smokes and expected to be able to do it in my home. Nope. I told her that just like when I was younger, they have to follow my house rules, and those rules include no smoking. I had chronic bronchitis as a child until I moved out of the house. If looks could kill, I'd be long dead. When I had my kid, I told her that not only couldn't she smoke near my baby, but she had to change her clothes if she wanted to hold baby. She knew I was serious and gave up 40+ years of smoking. My dad used to say that when he quit, nearly 20-year habit, it was because I crawled up in his lap, all of 3 years old, and said, "Daddy, you stink." Cold turkey. I got 35 more years with him. So win. Years ago, when my brother bought his first house, we all met there for Christmas that year. Mom, in her late 50s, early 60s, kept getting up and turning the thermostat up. The third or fourth time my brother turned it back down, he asked who kept turning it up. My mom said, "I do. I'm cold." My brother said, "Then put on a sweater. Isn't that what you always told us?" Quote, "She'll never visit my house, so I'll never have the satisfaction. But I sure savored my brothers." In the pre-Rona times, I moved my parents into my home. So even though the three of us are under the same roof, they technically live with me and not the other way around. I pay all the household bills. They help with the mortgage and buy food. It works out. At one point my stepdad was agitated about lights being left on. He'd go in behind us to turn them off, making snarky comments. Finally, I just told him, "I pay for the electricity. So what if I leave a light on? It's coming out of my pocket." He realized I was right, but I could tell he'd never thought about the situation from that perspective. He still walks behind us, turning the lights off and making snarky comments. Only now it's under the guise of saving me money. Tears of joy. Good MC there. Side note, I grew up under a similar system. If you don't like it, you can always move out, which I only recently thought of and realized is a terrible parenting practice. The issue is that kids can't move out. They aren't adults who can decide that they want a better home and leave to find one. Well, they can, but that's a whole nother can of worms. Chances are they'll end up living on the street, which might be better than their former home, but is no place for a kid to grow up. And I totally get that parents don't always have the time to explain why a rule is in place. There are some situations where the kid just needs to accept the rule and move on. And among adults, it's much more reasonable that the person who owns the home, pays the bills, should be able to decide how things work in their home. That said, tacitly threatening a kid with homelessness is a pretty poor policy, and anyone who does so needs to reevaluate their parenting strategy. My now estranged, for many reasons, father came over wearing a certain political slogan on a red hat, and I told him, "You march your ass back to your truck and put that in there, 'cause it ain't coming in my house and you know that." He pleaded, "But I'm your guest," which allowed me to drop his favorite from my childhood, "As long as you're in my house, you will follow my rules." Quote, "This was my wedding day, if that matters." Good for you. I really wanted to tell my mom to change clothes before holding my kids, but honestly, we live out of state and she only has seen my kids in person a handful of times before they were 2. Edit for clarity. Said it wasn't worth the fight of having her do so. We let it slide begrudgingly. I'll be goddamned if she ever smoked in my house or car though. She's never happy when I remind her of this. My mother was the same way. Even when I paid rent, I should have sent her like a 1099 for that to make sure she claimed it as income. But she got old and sick and I made it very clear that yes, I had a house and yes, I would always have room for her, but it was my house, my rules, and I would be as compromising as she was. Oddly enough, she never opted to stay with me, just as well as it would not have been pretty or long-lasting. I remember soon after we bought our first house my mill came over and made a snide remark about where I'd left my shoes by the front door. All I said was sorry. I didn't realize you were making our mortgage payments. As a smoker, I 100% agree with you on this. The only one who should have to deal with me smoking is me. Even in my own home I refuse to smoke inside because I have kids. Now adults. But I now have a grandchild. So same rules apply. It also made my mother mad when she'd visit and I'd literally point to the chair outside when she tried to smoke in the house. I'm nice enough to provide a chair, ashtray, and even a covered area so we are out of the weather, but you smoke in my house. You are out. No longer welcome. Nope. I told her that just like when I was younger. They have to follow my house rules and those rules include no smoking. I had chronic bronchitis as a child until I moved out of the house. If looks could kill, I'd be long dead. Parents who continue to smoke after having children. Obviously it's not quite as simple as just quit, but at that point you're actively endangering the health of the kids. Right? Secondhand smoke? You caused your mom to quit smoking? You are a goddess. I did the same thing with my mom. Change your clothes and wash your face and hands. She would always say, I used a spray so you can't smell it. Like no, you can't but I can. My mother stopped smoking when her first grandkid was due. My brother and I told her that neither one of us would put up with her smoking near our children. Not really MC but related. My mother emigrated to the US in her teens to live with relatives. While siblings and I were in school, we would occasionally ask her something about our schoolwork, and her answer would almost always be, I don't know. I didn't go to school here, always. About 10 years ago, we were puzzling out some family history stuff and I had a detailed map of the country she grew up in. We were looking at an online record and the handwriting was awful. There were 2 possible spellings of 2 different towns. And she said, do you think it's more likely that I'd a town A? And in a total flash of inspiration I got to say, I don't know. I didn't go to school there. And promptly died laughing. The look I got? Rolling on the floor, laughing, 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 rolling on the floor, laughing. Just thinking about it still makes me giggle and my eyes water a bit. My dad stopped when I was in high school because I had asthma attacks during band practice and I'd never had asthma issues before. It didn't last. When I came home from college the first time I was blown over by how smoky the house smelled. I asked my mom if he was smoking more and she said no. So yeah, noses acclimate. Malicious compliance at its very best. You not only protected your and your baby's health, you also dramatically improved your mom's health by getting her to stop smoking. You may have even added years to her life. Bravo! My mother went through the money and effort to get those laser surgeries to help with the nicotine addiction. She blew $1,000 and then blamed her relapses on me and my half-sister. Up until I moved out. She kept saying that she'll try to quit, but she genuinely hasn't. She also smoked during her pregnancies. Fun! My dad made his mom smoke outside. My mom was a similar story. She started smoking at about 19. The only time she stopped was for 9 months while she was pregnant with my sister, the youngest of 4. Breast cancer in the early didn't stop her from smoking. My oldest brother quit, and tried to get her to quit too. He threw out her tobacco. She'd just buy more. Eventually, we all moved out of home. My sister was the last. And when she did, Mom went into aged care. She was only 60. Lung disease caught up with her in less than 8 months after she went into aged care. She was gone. She was on oxygen full-time at the end, and still going out the front to smoke. I've never touched a cigarette in my life and never will. I had chronic bronchitis as a child until I moved out of the house. That is awful and sad.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.